There are moments when the Sigma male appears to step back, look defeated, or let someone else take the upper hand. But what most people never realize is that these moments are rarely accidents. His losses are often deliberate, strategic withdrawals designed to shift power, expose motives, or secure a long-term advantage. While others fight loudly to win every battle, he studies the terrain, measures people's intentions, and chooses the outcome that gives him maximum intelligence with minimum effort. That ability to pretend to lose, to control perception while gathering leverage, is what makes him far more dangerous than the loudest competitor in the room. His quiet retreats disarm people who thrive on ego. They think they've gained ground, earned influence, or outsmarted him, but they never notice how their own behavior changes once they believe he's no threat. They talk more, they reveal more, they push harder, they expose motives they would have otherwise kept hidden. His silence becomes a psychological vacuum that draws out the truth. What looks like defeat is often the setup, an intentional shift that allows him to read character, test loyalty, or observe the cracks in someone's facade. By the time others celebrate their win, he already sees the full blueprint of who they are. This is why pretending to lose becomes one of his sharpest tools. It resets the power dynamic in his favor, creates emotional blind spots in others, and gives him the freedom to operate outside their expectations. And if you want the full breakdown of these 9 situations, the invisible tactics, the psychology behind each move, and why this strategy works, stay with me. Before we continue, subscribe to Silent Lies and drop a comment saying, "I see the hidden strategy." It tells me you're ready for the deeper levels of Sigma psychology. He pretends to lose to study someone's true character under the illusion of victory. He understands a truth most people never realize. You learn far more about someone when they believe they've already won. So he steps back, loosens his grip, and allows the other person to feel triumphant. This illusion of victory becomes a mirror, one that exposes who they truly are when they think no consequences exist. In the space created by his quiet defeat, people drop their masks. The respectful become generous, the insecure become arrogant, the manipulative become bold, and the loyal become protective. His false loss becomes a psychological test, revealing intentions that words alone could never uncover. While they believe they've gained ground, he's gathering the information he needs to understand exactly who he's dealing with. This deliberate retreat becomes one of his most powerful tools because it allows him to decode character without confrontation. He watches how they speak about him when they think he's lowered his guard. He observes whether they offer help or take advantage, whether they stay humble or get drunk on superiority, whether they act with integrity or expose the darker impulses they tried to hide. People reveal more in victory than in conflict, and he knows this, so he lets the moment play out naturally. The beauty of his approach is that no one suspects they are being evaluated. They think he's passive, distracted, or simply not strong enough to push back. Meanwhile, he's studying patterns, noting inconsistencies, and mapping out the emotional landscape with surgical precision. What makes this tactic dangerous is how quietly he uses it. There's no confrontation, no accusation, no visible frustration, just stillness, the kind that makes others comfortable enough to show their truth. And once he sees that truth, his decisions become final. He knows who deserves his trust, who deserves distance, and who should never be allowed close again. Those who abuse their illusion of victory never understand why he changes. They never realize their behavior was exposed the moment they believed they had the upper hand. His loss was never real. It was strategy, a controlled moment of surrender that gave him clarity, leverage, and insight. He pretends to lose so he never loses anything that truly matters. He lets others think they've outsmarted him so they reveal their real intentions. He understands that people expose themselves most clearly in the moments when they believe they've gained the advantage. So he allows them to think they've outmaneuvered him, not because he's unaware, but because illusion is a sharper tool than confrontation. When someone believes they've outsmarted him, their guard drops. They stop acting carefully and start acting honestly. They reveal their ambitions, their ego, their greed, their envy, or their loyalty, without realizing he's watching every shift with surgical attention. By creating the illusion that he's a step behind, he studies how they move when they feel superior. And those movements tell him everything he needs: who respect him, who fears him, who envies him, and who is quietly plotting their own agenda. This technique works because he knows that true intentions hide under pressure but erupt under perceived victory. When someone thinks they've fooled him, they start talking more freely, offering unsolicited advice, bragging about their strategy, or subtly gloating. They reveal the kind of person they are when they believe no consequences remain. Manipulators become bold, opportunists grow careless, and the trustworthy remain steady. He watches without responding, letting the scene unfold, letting them expose their thought process in real time. Every detail, the smirk, the shift in tone, the sudden confidence, becomes data he stores. He never interrupts their performance, because the illusion works only as long as they think he hasn't noticed the act. What makes this approach so dangerous is that he never corrects their assumption. He doesn't reclaim power loudly or expose their behavior with dramatic confrontation. He simply adjusts his mental file on them and moves accordingly. By the time they realize he wasn't fooled, he has already withdrawn access, closed emotional doors, changed direction, or executed a strategy that neutralizes their influence entirely. They thought they were in control, but their own behavior gave him the upper hand. He lets people believe they've outsmarted him because doing so reveals more truth than any interrogation ever could. And by the time they understand the mistake, the game has already shifted in his favor. He steps back in conflicts to observe who escalates, who manipulates, and who exposes themselves. He knows that conflict is a stage where people reveal their truest selves. So instead of jumping into the chaos, he steps back, not out of fear, but out of strategy. His withdrawal is intentional, a controlled pause that creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, others show exactly who they are. The impulsive escalate, trying to dominate the space he refuses to fight for. The manipulative twist narratives, hoping to steer the moment to their advantage. The insecure scramble to protect their image, exposing the very weaknesses they hope to hide. By standing still while others spin, he gathers more information in silence than he ever could in the heat of argument. His calmness becomes a tool, revealing motives, temperaments, and loyalties with clinical clarity. The beauty of this approach is that he never has to force anything. He doesn't provoke, accuse, or pressure. He simply watches. This vantage point lets him see who argues from emotion, who argues from ego, and who argues from truth. He notices who becomes louder when unchallenged, who becomes cruel when unchecked, and who steps in to restore balance even when it costs them something. Conflict becomes a diagnostic test, and everyone else takes it without realizing they're being evaluated. While they burn energy trying to win the moment, he conserves his strength and gathers data that will matter long after the heat has faded. It's not disengagement, it's reconnaissance. What makes this tactic powerful is the precision it gives him afterward. By stepping back, he identifies exactly who can be trusted, who should be kept at a distance, and who must be cut out entirely. He adjusts his relationships with a silent certainty that others rarely question because they think he simply got quiet during the conflict. They never realize he was absorbing the entire landscape while they exposed themselves piece by piece. And when the dust settles, he moves forward with the advantage. Not because he fought harder, but because he understood more. His silence in conflict isn't passive. It's the moment he sees everything clearly. He acts uninterested or disengaged to see who keeps pushing and why. When he becomes quiet, pulls back, or shows no visible enthusiasm, it's rarely a sign of disinterest. It's a strategic filter. By acting disengaged, he creates a psychological gap, and in that gap, people reveal their true motivations. Those who only approached him for validation quietly disappear. Those who were trying to manipulate him grow frustrated and push harder. Those who genuinely value him remain steady, unbothered by the lack of obvious reaction. His apparent indifference becomes a test of intent. Who wants connection, who wants control, and who simply wants attention. He learns more in these moments of feigned detachment than he could through direct questioning. Because people show their purest selves when they think he's no longer invested, this deliberate withdrawal allows him to observe patterns that would otherwise stay hidden. When someone continues to pursue conversation despite his quietness, he pays attention to whether they are motivated by curiosity, insecurity, dominance, or sincerity. When someone becomes irritated by his lack of energy, he sees how their ego depends on his responsiveness. When someone subtly shifts their behavior to regain his attention, he recognizes the tactics they use to maintain influence. And when someone remains respectful and calm, without demanding anything from him, he identifies them as emotionally stable and worth keeping close. By acting uninterested, he creates a silent sorting process, a natural separation between those who come with real intentions and those who only come for what they think they can extract. What makes this strategy so powerful is that it puts him in control without ever appearing to take control. He doesn't chase clarity, he lets clarity come to him. His silence unbalances people who rely on attention to feel significant. His calm frustrates those who expect emotional reactions, and his lack of visible interest neutralizes anyone who thought they could guide him through pressure or charm. In the end, the people who remain after his act of disengagement are the ones who were never dependent on his validation in the first place. Everyone else exposes their motives and eventually fades away. Through a simple performance of quiet indifference, he learns who deserves his energy and who was only attracted to the idea of being able to influence him. He accepts temporary setbacks to secure long-term strategic advantage. He doesn't fear short-term losses because he isn't playing a short-term game. While others panic at the slightest setback, he sees these moments as strategic investments. A small loss today can buy him information, leverage, clarity, or positioning that will matter far more in the long run. He understands the psychology of patience, that real power comes not from winning quickly, but from winning decisively. So when a situation demands it, he steps back, lets someone else win the moment, or allows an outcome that looks unfavorable from the outside. But behind that quiet acceptance is a mind already calculating the long-term ripple effects. Temporary defeat becomes a disguise for long-term positioning, and the world never notices the switch until the results unfold in his favor. His willingness to endure these short-lived setbacks gives him a strategic flexibility others lack. Most people cling to pride, trying to protect their image in every moment. He protects his future instead. When he accepts a loss, it isn't resignation, it's redirection. He studies the landscape that emerges afterward, who gloats, who relaxes, who shifts tactics, who exposes emotional cracks. Setbacks reveal weakness in others more quickly than success does. While they celebrate prematurely, he's observing the structure of their confidence, noting where it's fragile, where it's blind, where it's overextended. This insight becomes ammunition. And because he didn't resist the small loss, he now has a clear path to a larger, more meaningful win. What makes this approach dangerous is how quietly it operates. People misinterpret his lack of resistance as doubt or incompetence. They see his calm acceptance and assume he's surrendering control, unaware that he's simply changing the time frame of the game. He's not trying to win the battle, he's preparing to win the war. And by the time they realize what he's doing, the advantage has already shifted. He moves from setback to strategy seamlessly, using patience as a weapon and perspective as a shield. His victories rarely look dramatic. They look inevitable, as if the path was designed in his favor. In reality, it was built through every quiet choice to embrace a small loss instead of sacrificing the long-term advantage he always keeps in mind. He lets others take the spotlight so he can move unnoticed in the background. He understands that visibility is often a trap, a place where egos inflate, mistakes become public, and enemies sharpen their focus. So he willingly steps aside and lets others shine, celebrate, and claim attention. Not because he lacks confidence, but because he sees the advantage of operating in the shadows. When people rush toward the spotlight, they become predictable. They reveal their ambitions, their insecurities, their hunger for validation. Meanwhile, he moves quietly in the background, observing every shift in behavior without drawing suspicion. His invisibility becomes his armor. By avoiding the spotlight, he frees himself from scrutiny, pressure, and expectation, allowing a strategy to develop without interference. What looks like absence is actually calculated positioning. This choice to stay unseen gives him access to a different kind of power, one built on knowledge rather than display. While others are performing for admiration, he is gathering insights, who competes unnecessarily, who bends under pressure, who manipulates subtly, and who is blinded by attention. People speak more freely, act more authentically, and reveal more truth when they believe he isn't watching closely. And because he isn't trying to dominate the stage, no one guards themselves around him. He becomes the quiet presence that absorbs everything. This vantage point allows him to anticipate conflicts before they erupt, identify opportunities before they're obvious, and understand people more deeply than they understand themselves. His strength grows while others chase applause. What makes this tactic so dangerous is how slowly others realize what he's doing, usually not until it's too late. While they exhaust themselves maintaining their image, he uses that time to refine his strategy and build a foundation no one saw forming. When the moment comes for him to act, his moves are decisive because they were crafted without distraction. His results appear sudden, almost effortless, shocking those who assumed he was uninvolved or unambitious. They never noticed the quiet work happening behind the scenes. By letting others take the spotlight, he not only avoids unnecessary battles, he gains the freedom to evolve without resistance. And when he finally steps forward, it isn't to impress, it's to finish a game he's been winning long before anyone realized he was even playing. He allows someone to win emotionally to expose their ego, greed, or instability. He knows that the fastest way to reveal a person's true nature is to let them taste emotional victory. So, he steps back just enough to let them feel like they've won. The argument, the attention, the upper hand, the moment of perceived superiority. And once that emotional high hits, their mask slips. Ego swells, greed surfaces, instability leaks through the cracks they've been holding shut. People rarely show who they are when they're losing. They show it when they believe they've already secured dominance. He understands this psychological shift deeply, which is why he allows these emotional wins to unfold. In their celebration, he studies the truth hidden beneath their reactions. This tactic works because emotional victory disarms self-control. When someone thinks they've defeated him, they stop performing humility and start performing themselves. The insecure become arrogant. The manipulative become reckless. The spiteful reveal their true intentions. Their emotional celebration becomes a confession, one they don't realize they're giving. And while they're busy enjoying their perceived triumph, he remains calm, watching how they speak, how they treat him, and how they treat others when they feel emboldened. Every shift becomes data. Every reaction becomes a clue. In their attempt to feel powerful, they expose the very flaws that make them weak. He doesn't need to confront them. They reveal everything voluntarily. What makes this approach dangerous is that he never interrupts their illusion. He doesn't argue, defend himself, or reclaim control in the moment. He lets the emotional victory run its course, gathering insights that will shape his next move. And by the time they realize he wasn't actually defeated, that he allowed the moment to unfold, his decisions are already made. Access is cut, trust is reevaluated, boundaries shift. He doesn't punish, he adjusts. And that adjustment is far more powerful than any confrontation could be. Because while they were celebrating a win that never truly mattered, he gained clarity that changes everything. His quiet surrender wasn't weakness, it was analysis. A deliberate opening that exposed the parts of them they tried hardest to hide. He withdraws on purpose to see who notices, who panics, and who takes advantage. His withdrawal is never an accident. It is a psychological lens he uses to understand the true structure of his relationships. When he steps back, goes silent, or removes his presence from a space where he was once consistent, the reactions of others reveal everything. The ones who genuinely care notice immediately. They reach out, check in, or at least acknowledge the shift. The insecure or possessive begin to panic, interpreting his silence as abandonment or loss of control. And the opportunistic, the ones who were waiting for a moment of weakness, take advantage, showing behaviors they hid while he was fully engaged. By stepping away, he allows the ecosystem around him to rearrange itself, revealing alliances, intentions, and motives that would have remained hidden in his presence. His retreat becomes a revelation. This controlled disappearance works because people's behavior is most honest in the absence of observation. When he withdraws, the social mask dissolves. He sees who depended on his energy, who only stayed because he was useful, who respected him, who feared him, and who underestimated him. Silence becomes a filter. Those who valued him remain stable, while those who used him shift instantly. Some begin to gossip, assuming he's weakened. Some try to assert dominance now that he isn't participating. Others expose jealousy they previously hid, and a rare few simply give him space without judgment, revealing loyalty and emotional maturity. He watches these reactions from a distance, understanding that his presence prevented these truths from surfacing earlier. Withdrawal isn't avoidance. It's intel gathering. What makes this tactic so dangerous is that he never announces the test. No warnings, no explanations, no dramatic exit. Just a subtle shift that feels natural from the outside but deliberate on the inside. By the time others realize his withdrawal was intentional, he has already mapped out who belongs in his circle, who must remain at arm's length, and who must be completely cut off. Those who panicked revealed their insecurity. Those who tried to take advantage revealed their disloyalty. Those who didn't notice revealed their lack of connection. And those who respected his silence revealed their alignment. He doesn't confront or correct, he recalibrates. His withdrawal wasn't a retreat. It was a spotlight, illuminating the truth that only emerges when he's no longer in the room. He slows down or fails intentionally to mislead people who track his progress. He understands that the moment people begin watching him closely, studying his progress, comparing themselves to him, or trying to predict his next move, he loses strategic advantage. So he does something most minds would never consider. He intentionally slows down. He lets his momentum appear weaker. He allows small failures to surface. He reduces his visibility just enough to convince observers that he's no longer a threat or that his path is stalled. This manufactured deceleration disarms the people who are monitoring him, feeding their assumptions while freeing him from their expectations. They relax. They stop watching. They stop preparing. And in that gap of lowered vigilance, he regains control of his trajectory. His fake slowdown becomes a smokescreen, making his true intentions invisible. This tactic works because most people are reactive, not perceptive. They judge progress by external signs, visible achievement, constant noise, continuous motion. When he pauses or steps back, they assume he's lost direction or ability. Some feel relieved, believing their competition has faded. Others feel superior, mistaking his quiet recalibration for defeat. And those with hidden agendas loosen their guard, revealing plans they would have kept tightly concealed if they believed he was still advancing. He studies all of this silently. His staged failure becomes a laboratory of human behavior, revealing who roots for his downfall, who tries to take his place, and who genuinely remains supportive regardless of pace. The world thinks he's slowing down. In truth, he's speeding up internally. What makes this approach dangerous is the precision with which he executes the comeback. His return is never loud, emotional, or chaotic. It is decisive. It is timed. It is built in the quiet moments when everyone thought he had stopped progressing. He emerges with clarity no one expected, moving faster than those who underestimated him can respond. By misleading observers with strategic pauses, he protects his plans from interference and keeps rivals blind to his real growth. They only realize the truth when he surpasses them effortlessly. Not because he was slow, but because he was rebuilding at a depth they never imagined. His apparent failure was never a fall. It was a disguise, a reset, a quiet reconstruction that allowed him to rise without noise, without pressure, and without anyone seeing the blueprint until it was already complete. When a man learns to bend perception, control tempo, and manipulate expectations without ever raising his voice, he becomes someone the world cannot predict and cannot defeat. That's why Sigma males move with such quiet mastery. Their losses are lessons, their retreats are observations, and their failures are often disguises for strategy. Nothing they do is random. Nothing is accidental. Every setback is calculated, every silence purposeful, every shift deliberate. And the people who misunderstand these moves are the ones who end up blindsided when the results finally unfold. If you want more psychological breakdowns like this, the hidden tactics, the subtle strategies, the mindsets that make Sigma males impossible to corner, make sure you subscribe to Silent Wise. And before you go, drop a comment saying, "The quiet ones play the deepest game." It tells me you're one of the few who actually sees the strategy behind the silence.